Hi, this is Scott with eTrailer, and today we're going to be doing some maintenance on our trailer we have in the shop today. And what we're going to be doing is installing some new bearings. Here in front of me on the table, we have our Timken bearing kit for our Lippert, Dexter, and Alco axles. What this is going to include our inner seal. It's going to include our inner bearing, which is our larger one here. It is also going to include the race that comes with it. And onto the small one here, it's going to include our bearing and our race. It's going to include a nut keeper and our cotter pin. Now, this is a really good set if you're looking to get it all done at once. You want the bearings done, the races, the seals, everything. This is a really good high quality kit to go with. Now you can buy these parts separately, so if maybe you only want the bearings and you don't need the races, or maybe just the seal and the bearings, you can kind of pick and choose which parts you want that will fit your needs. Now the trailer we're working on today does have the Easy Lube axles, so we won't be utilizing these two pieces here, which is the cotter pin and the keeper. So just kind of keep in mind as we go along here, we're going to be using these parts in the kit, and we'll start getting that done right now. Now we have our trailer all supported on all four corners with our jack stands, so we got that all set up so it's good and safe to work with. One thing we did notice here, and one of the reasons we are going to replace these bearings, is if you grab your wheel like this and you can hear that bearing walking around in there, that's a little bit too much play. And so with that, you get hauling heavy loads and stuff like that, what it's going to do is it's just going to get worse. It's not going to get any better. You can grease it all you want, and all you're doing is just putting a Band-Aid on something. So what we need to do is we'll get this apart, and we'll get all of our bearings and everything out of there, and we'll kind of take a look at them and see what we've got going on. So with that, what we are going to be doing is we'll pull our hub off, we'll get our wheel off, our hub off, get everything apart. And since we do have that much play, we will be going ahead and replacing the bearing races in there as well. We'll start by getting off our rim and tire. There. Now for our next step, we're just going to get our cap off here. So whatever you need to do is kind of like get behind it, and once you get it started, you can work your way around. Now, if you just go along the edge like that, you can see that it pushed it out. By taking the screwdriver and just going down like that, it's going to naturally push it out. If you just tap it along the side, you don't have to hit it real hard. Just kind of get it to go in between it. And once you get it moving out, you can kind of go around it. Just pop it out. Now what I like to do is take a paper towel and set it on the ground. That way, if my cap tips over or something and I plan on reusing this, it's on the rag, and if it's not going to get any dirt and stuff in it. So another thing I like to do, if I am going to reuse that part, I'll put another one on top of it. So when I go to take the hub off, it's not going to get a bunch of nasty dirt and grit and stuff up in there. Now what we'll do is we'll just wipe off some of this grease. And we can expose our keeper here. And just keep our screwdriver handy, and we're just going to go around that and pop that off carefully because we will be reusing that. And same with that, we'll just set that right over here under our paper towels. Now with that, most of the time, this nut should be finger tight. Let's go ahead and back that off. Pretty simple, really. Can be a dirty job, but nothing a little dish soap can't handle. Now, if you get a wiggle like that, you'll have another washer in here that is keyed. Go ahead and pop that out. And we have our outer bearing here. And as you can see, that's got some wear to it and pretty gritty. Got a lot of dirty stuff up in there, so these are definitely due to be changed out. With your drum here, if you do have your brakes in here, sometimes your pads can be pushed out kind of hard. So if it is the case with that, you can just tap around your drum and that'll get it to kind of break loose. What we need to do, just kind of grab it on the ends and wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Now in this case, our pads are hanging up on our drum a little bit here. What you can do, if you plan on keeping your brakes that are in here, there's a little wheel nut down in the bottom, in the back of your back plate here. What you can do is pull out the little rubber plug and you'll see a little wheel in there. You can take a screwdriver and just turn that little wheel until this loosens up. But since we're going to be replacing these brakes in here, we're just going to tap it and work its way off. Now that we're in here, we can see our spindle here. What I like to do is kind of get that wiped off and cleaned up so we can get a good visual inspection of our spindle and make sure there's no scoring or any grooving going on here. And so far it looks to be pretty good, so we're going to be able to keep running with that spindle. Just want to get all the grit and all the grease off of it because we're going to be starting fresh. Now, as we can see here, why we really need to replace our bearings and our seal. Our bearings are all contaminated with dirt and grit and probably water and everything else. You can see where our seal kind of gave out and it's been leaking around it over time. That's a good indicator too that we need to just replace the whole system. So what we're going to do is we're just going to work our way around our seal here. And you can use a bigger pry bar, anything like that. What it takes is just kind of work it around it. Since we are replacing the seal, so we'll just go ahead and get that going now. Now just working around it like that, just kind of popping on your pry bar, just work your way around, and it'll be out of there just like that. Now inside here, you can see just how bad and nasty these bearings are. So now that we get to this point, we'll just set all of our old bearings and stuff off to the side, and we'll kind of start cleaning up our slotted spacer washer here and our nut, and we'll just kind of get these cleaned up because we will be using these. And we will also clean up this keeper we have here. And once we get all that cleaned up, we'll just set it off to the side and get it ready for reuse. Now what I usually do is just take some of the throwaway shop rags and I'll just get all up in the hub and try and get as much of the heavy grease out as I can. I will be coming through with brake cleaner and kind of spraying it out some too, but you want to get a lot of the heavy stuff out of there before you even try doing that. It's just a cleaner way to do it. Now that we got a lot of the grease out of there, we're going to get ready to start removing the races. If you look down in here, you're going to be able to see the edge of it all the way around. So you can see down on the end down here, that's going to be our front one. You can see the lip of that. So that is where we're going to start, and we're just going to work our way around with a brass punch here and just kind of keep working around one side to the other, back and forth, almost in like a star pattern, and we'll just gradually get it tapped out until we get it to a point. And with it facing down here, it is going to stop once it gets to the ground. So what we'll do then is we'll just lift it up after we get it to that point, and then we'll just tap around it and it should pop right out. Because what it's going to do, it's going to come up flush against this right here and flat on the ground. So we just need to pop it all the way out as far as we can until we get it out to here, and then we'll finish driving it out. Now once you get to a point with your hub and you've got this on a flat surface where this part won't let the bearing come out anymore, what you can do is you can take your wheel and you can set your hub back in your wheel. Set it back in there. Then you can take your brass punch and finish sending it out that way, because then your hub's up off the ground. It's secure. It's not going to be sliding around on you. And just kind of work your way back around it until it pops out, and it'll fall out inside of the wheel there, and you're good to go. And then what you can do also, you can just flip your hub and it's up off the ground. Then you could work on your back one and end up driving that out as well. Now that we have both of the races popped out of our hub, now we'll just clean everything up with our brake cleaner. We'll spray down in there and get any kind of debris or anything in there, any leftover grease. Just clean it out really good and we'll dry it out and we'll get it clean. And we'll do that over our trash can here so we don't make a big mess of our floor. But after we get to that point, then we'll start running in our new races. Now we're going to start with our small race here. It doesn't really matter which one you do, that's the one I've got here. Now before we get this race started here, I'm going to take a little bit of dab of grease and I'm just going to get it kind of a real light coating in here. That's just going to make it a little bit easier. We're not really glopping it in there, we're just kind of getting a little bit in there so it'll help get it all started. Now these are a really tight fit. These are really exact tight measurements, so it's a little tricky. So what you want to do is kind of get it started on there and kind of look across it. You're going to want it up where you can see kind of eye level and just gradually tap around it. You're going to want something where it's not going to mar it up, so I'm using a rubberized dead blow hammer just to kind of get it started. Now once I have it started in, I'll take the small old bearing and I'll put it in place here. One thing I like to do is take a hammer with the rounded end like this one here because it just sits right in that bearing. Then I can use my dead blow hammer on the flat side of this and I'll just slowly start seating it down. And once it gets seated, you're going to hear the difference in the hammer strikes. So after you do, you want to make sure you check your race, make sure everything's nice and smooth. And under here, you're going to find the lip of it. So what you can do is flip it over and kind of look along your inside edge here with a flashlight and make sure you're seated all the way along this edge here. And if you have any of that grease that pushed down through, you can always wipe that off. And just make sure you don't have any gap in there. And if you do see a little bit of a gap, just bring it down a little more with the hammer and you'll be good to go. Now with our inner race, we're going to follow the same procedure. We're going to want the slope part of our bearing facing out, and this part with our numbers is going to go in. So we're just going to put a light coat of grease in there just to help get things moving, just like we did with our front one. Just make sure we got it all nice and clean as well. And we'll just get it set in place. And same with the other one, we're going to use our old bearing. And we're just going to get our old bearing cleaned up. And we're going to set it in place. And use our same hammer trick, holding it level, holding it in place. We'll tap with our hand and we'll just gradually start bringing it down. Now what I'm going to do is just come back with the brass punch and I'm just going to get it to seat down a little further. And the brass is going to keep it from not marring. You still want to be careful and keep it held against the edge so that way you're not marring anything. And it's just going to walk around the edges here from side to side, almost in like a star pattern, being careful not to slip off with your punch. Now we need to get some grease in our bearings. So what we do is we just get some grease in our palm here and we're just going to push it in all the way around and you'll see it start coming out the ends here. You just want to work your way around it, working the grease into the bearing itself. And we'll start seeing it come out the end here. It's starting to roll out. Just want to keep working it in there. And got it worked all the way through that bearing there, all the way around. Now I like to give it a little turn, make sure we got everything seated in there. And all of our needle bearings do have them in there. So another thing is too, is we will be greasing these with our grease gun, because we have the greasable axles. After we're all done with our installation, we'll come back through and hit it with our grease gun as well. So now what we'll do, we'll come over here, and in our hub here, we'll just get a little bit of grease up in here on our race, and we'll get our bearing put in place. Make sure everything sits in there nice, and it does. Now we have our Timken seal, and this is what we're going to replace on the back of our hub today. Now to put it in place, we just want to get it sitting as level as we can get it. And we'll show you a little trick here. You can always kind of try and look across it, make sure you've got it semi-level. Once you got it close, okay. And what I'll do is just kind of tap it down. Looks level. Now what the trick is, what we do is we have a hole saw here. What we like to do is just kind of center it on here, and we have this little handle part for it. And what we can do is take our hammer and just start tapping it in place. And what we can do, if it starts to get a little cockeyed, we can move it either way inside of our seal here, and that's going to help us get it leveled out. We'll hear that metallic hit. Take a look at it, make sure we have it level around our hub here, and that'll let us know we have it in place where it needs to be. Now with it sitting in place, I'll take a little bit of grease and just kind of rub it on the inside of our seal here where it has that little lip. I'll just get a little bit of grease right there just to help it slide onto the spindle a little bit. You don't have to get crazy with this part. It's just going to help it run up onto the spindle a little bit. Now before we slide this over the spindle, what we're going to end up doing is packing our other new bearing here and getting it ready to go in place, and we'll have it on a clean rag. But another thing we want to do before we get to that point is we have to clean the inside of our drum here, because we don't want any grease or anything like that contaminating our pads. So what we'll do is we'll just hit some brake cleaner, either carefully around this edge, just keep it out of here. Just kind of hit it around the edge a little bit. Get some on your rag carefully. Watch your getting it on your hands, because this stuff's kind of nasty. And just wipe it around in there. Make sure you don't have any greasy fingerprints or anything like that. And anywhere you touched it in there doing this, just make sure there's no grease anywhere inside of our drum here. I kind of hit around this. You don't want to spray in here and contaminate your new grease. So just kind of wipe off anywhere you've got it nasty. Okay. Now with our seal in place, our bearing in place, we have our smaller bearing for the front, all greased up, packed, ready to go. We have our brakes all set up here. Now we're going to take our hub assembly and carefully put it over our spindle. You just want to be careful with it not to nick anything. Get it set in place. Give it a little push back. Now we'll take our bearing, get our bearing put in place. Okay. Give it a little turn back and forth. Get our seal to seat. Now we can take our washer, the spaces on there, goes over our bearing. Now we'll take our nut and just get it started down. Finger tight. Quick spin. Now we have an 1.5-inch socket, and these are kind of an oddball socket and kind of hard to find. We're going to have our torque wrench here. What we're going to do is we're going to run it down. We're going to get it set up here, and we've got it set to 50, and we're going to spin it. And we're just going to tighten it down to 50. And with the electronic torque wrench, we can kind of monitor it as we're going down, but we do want to keep turning it. So we can monitor it while slowly turning, bring it down to 50. There we beep, we got 50 pounds. Now what we're going to do, what that is for is that's going to seat everything in place that we replaced and make sure everything is where it's supposed to be. So when you're turning it, that's just making everything sit up where it's supposed to be. It gets your seal in place, it makes sure your braces are all seated up where they're supposed to be. Now what we'll do is we'll back it off without turning it. And we've got it at finger tight here. Now you want to make sure you get it in a good spot. They kind of have a sweet spot for them. You have your flat and you have your flat here. You want to get that lined up. So what you want to do is have it where it just moves a little bit. So right about here, you can back it off just a squirt to get this where you need it to be. But you want it to be able to pop on where it rides real nice, but you want to be able to move that nut as well. So there's like a fine line of too loose, too tight. So you kind of want it right there where that's kind of free. And you can feel your hub doesn't move back and forth or anything too much. And it's free spinning, so we're good to go there. We don't have a bunch of play or anything in it, so that's just right. Now that we have our hub and everything all back in place and everything all set up where we want it, we're going to go ahead and get our grease zerk here for our easy lube axle setup greased up, and we're going to get our cap back on and everything put back together. So the grease we're using today is we're going to use our Timken disc and drum grease. This is going to be a high temp grease, and it's for marine applications. It's going to stay tacky and stay in your bearings and not sling all out all over the place. Really good grease, and I recommend having a fresh tube of this and then another tube of just the type that you could use to get in your hand and pack your bearings. Have both kinds handy. Get a tube of this in your gun and you'll be all set. Now as you can see, we've got it just out here. You can see where it's kind of rolling out. That means we've got it all through our bearings. Now we'll just get this one popped off. Now we can put our cap on, and we can even hit it again a little more if we wanted to with our cap on. But I just wanted to be able to see that we have it rolling like that. That means it's coming through our bearings and getting spread throughout all of them. Now, we did get a replacement cap for this one because both of our caps were damaged. Ours had the rubber type also here, where you can just pop this out to get it your grease fitting. So we did get new ones for this because the rubber part was all worn out. So we got new ones here. We'll just get those installed. Just want to center it up and just kind of lightly tap them around. And you'll see that it can be a little tricky to get it started, but once you get it going, you just want to tap it nice and easy. You'll see this line move in. You'll tap this side, tap that side. Just kind of go around with it. And when you're doing any of this stuff with these, you don't want to hit anything really too hard. You just kind of want to give it a little tap around. And anything that you're putting on will just kind of tap into place just nice and easy. You just want to take your time and just go easy on it. You don't really want to be beating on anything really hard. And one of these is really nice because it's not going to mar any of the surfaces or put any big dents in anything. But you just kind of go around nice and easy on all this stuff that you do, and just be patient and it'll go into place. Some things will want to fight you, but it'll eventually go. Just be patient with it. Okay, now we did have our little rubber cap taken off. We were wondering that if we had all that grease in there, if we had like an airlock inside of this, with all that grease in there, it was not wanting to pop on. But I pulled this off and I was able to get it centered up and get it started down. So now, what I'm going to do while I have it off is I'm just going to hit this with a little more grease and get some in the inside of our cup here. and that'll get it good to go as far as grease. I really don't go any further than running it up into here too much. I just like to get around the edge, the inside of the cap, and then we'll go ahead and pop our little rubber plug on here. And that'll be all set for your bearing installation. Hopefully this video will help you make the right decision on your Timken bearing kit. I'm Scott with eTrailer. Thanks for watching.